Wow, thanks. I've got a cultural question. Well, what I think it ends up being a cultural question. Regarding the Connecticut shooting and some other things. You've pointed in this and then on some of the Monday shows to the mental instability of the younger people in the country, with various statistics saying that up to, maybe around half of those under 25 years of age are exhibiting various signs of mental health problems. Now, the Connecticut shooting is being treated generally as a gun control issue or sometimes as a mental health screening issue or treatment issue, but the broader cultural backdrop against which it took place is being ignored. So, it's true that dramatic cuts in public mental health services are being made. California's cut 21% out of its budget, for example. But even as President Obama was weeping his crocodile tears over the victims in Connecticut, he continues every week to engage in meetings where he plans out targets for murder by drone. According to law schools, Stanford and NYU, the number of civilians killed by these drone strikes is conservatively in the several hundreds. We've also read recently of cruelty and neglect in NHS, National Health Service facilities in Britain, where patients have been reported to have been starved or dehydrated to death through inattentive or intentional healthcare providers. Some doctors are even prescribing drinking water as a prescription to ensure that the paperwork goes through and the nurses will actually make sure these patients get water so they don't die of dehydration. And there's a lot of outrage about what's being reported, about what's taking place in these hospitals, as a callous disregard for human dignity. But it's actually not a shocking event if you look at the overall cultural direction that we're going in, such as the greenie intention. If you truly believe that the world is dramatically overpopulated, it's a little bit hypocritical to then be concerned about the well-being of people. In the United States, or overseas rather, at this point, suicide is killing more of our soldiers than combat. The U.S. Army reports so far this year 303 suicides or potential, investigated suicides compared to 212 combat deaths in Afghanistan. Striking the special forces as well. Years of continual war against an ill-defined enemy in theaters often without a clear objective. This takes its toll. So let me ask you about what is the fallacy of thinking that would be involved in people looking at these issues individually, as a gun issue, as a healthcare issue, as a mental health issue, as opposed to a global question of culture and economic direction towards a significant and a meaningful future, such as NWAPA would be a starting point for.
No. Well, you've got two categories of issues to consider in this place. First of all, the story which led to the gun control matter is a complete farce. The problem is that you have probably up to 60% of certain categories of young people in the United States who are suicide cases, or potentially. They become suicide cases because they are totally depressed in various ways. They're psychiatric cases. Now, in former times, we used to have a regard for mental health problems by providing institutions who would watch out for these kinds of things, especially among young people, like children in school at various ages, or people who have graduated or are still youth. And that's the great concentration, which is estimated as about 60% or something in that direction of people who have mental health care problems, but they have lost what used to be considered the required mental health care. And that was the case in this case in Connecticut. That simple. It was a mother-son problem, which led to the son, who had gone over the edge to get a gun from somewhere in his family's possession, and do this job, then killed his mother and killed himself. I don't know what the exact sequence was, because it was some doubt about that in the first place. But the point was, this was not a case of gun control. It was a case of mind control. Because I had a disturbed young man from a rather wealthy family, a sign of a wealthy family. And it was the only cause for his going out and killing, and he did the killing. The only cause for that was his mental health problem, which was essentially unattended as it should have been. That was, he was like a bomb ready to explode, and somebody lit the fuse, and like a family argument or something like that. The exact details are not that well known, but do you know the case? We've gone through this with people who are experts in the New York area on this kind of thing, and we understand the nature of the area. What the president did was committed a fraud. It's to say this is a threat from guns against all kinds of things and so forth. He's just committing a fraud. He commits frauds all the time. Don't expect the truth from this president. He's not capable of producing it. His rage is more important than anything for him. And so forget it, that part. What you're dealing with is we have created a society which increasingly we are destroying our own youth, in particular, as well as others. The lack of jobs, the lowering of standards of life, the impoverished social relations which are going on in this nation, which are all a product of the post-Kennedy USA. Because the whole problem started approximately 1 to 2 years after the war in Indochina was launched. We already then began to get the drug patterns and other kinds of patterns, which led into 1968, so you got the 68 phenomenon. From the 68 phenomenon, which was started 2 years earlier, actually as a phenomenon, and was attributed largely to being a Vietnam War byproduct. The population, the youth population of the United States has become increasingly insane. The large reason is chiefly not bad parents or so forth, it is social circumstances. But it's the fact that life, with the assassination of Kennedy, and what every American with any brains knew was a fraud. That is, the assassination of Kennedy was not what it was represented to be. And the cover-up of the assassination of Kennedy, and the later attempt to cover up the assassination of his brother Robert, defined a period in which younger generations, intermingled with the war in Indochina, began to go mad. Most of the marijuana and similar kinds of drug addiction in the United States came from that period and came out of, as a byproduct of that circumstance. But then you have with the 1991 process, and that was the end of any reasonable government in the United States, and that led to this hell. 2001 is the key point of this thing. That was a breakdown. It was a sudden breakdown. People had lost confidence because of what was done against, the president then, and he did not react well. Later, he got involved into supporting the bailout process. I had a big argument with him on that one. I said, you do not go with the bailout. And he said, well, I've been to woodshed before, and I've survived. In reply to my rebuttal to what I said to him on that occasion. So that's the problem. We have this condition of insanity. And this goes together with the idea of general doing everything to make the situation hopeless. But don't try to take the facts by the New York Times, so-called, and take that as being serious business. That's a fraud. Well, you have to understand, this president is nothing but a fraud. I don't even know what his citizenship is, actually. And there's no proof given to me, available to me, which says he was born as an American citizen. No evidence whatsoever. It'd have to be proven. And everything about him says he is, in general, a big lie. He is, in totality, essentially a big lie. He is nothing of what most people believe he is. Nothing at all. And that's the way you have to look at it.
Well, that's a conclusion to the questions that we have available tonight. I would just picking up on what you just ended with, say that, number one, the continued attention that we've drawn to the facts behind Benghazi, the constantly updated fact sheet, and the leaflet that we have available now saying, Obama, you must answer the question, what did you know and when did you know it, is critical, and we will continue to intervene with this. And then I will just call attention to what you said in the beginning, that there is no higher priority than the immediate implementation as soon as this week of the full 3-step program starting with Glass-Steagall. So I think our marching orders are very clear, and I would like to thank our viewers for tuning in tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. LaRouche and Jason and Dennis as well. Thank you for watching, and that brings a conclusion to tonight's webcast.